There is some minor changes in the schedule due to some technical issue, network issue at NIT Arunachal Pradesh campus. On behalf of Dr. Sanendu Kumar Chakraborty, Mr. Ganesh Kumar Mahato will deliver the talk from others. He is residing in other location. So there is some issue at NIT Arunachal Pradesh campus, network issue. Mr. Ganesh Kumar Mahato is the senior research scholar under the supervision of Dr. Sanendu Chakraborty, and he will deliver the talk on recent trends in cyber security. So welcome Mr. Mahato for this session and for the FDP on cyber security. Till now only 35 participants have joined. So we may wait for 1 or 2 minutes. Okay. So let them join because almost 80 participants are joining, participating in the program. So you may join. You may start after 2-3 minutes later. You may start now, Mr. Mahato.
Good afternoon, everyone, and a warm welcome to today's FDP.
Your audio is not clear. There is some issue in microphone.
I think I'm audible properly.
Now it's okay.
Yes, sir.
And share your screen, please.
Sure, sir. Good afternoon, everyone, and a warm welcome to the today's FDP titled Research Recent Trends in Cybersecurity. Let me introduce myself. I am Ganesh Kumar Mahato, a PhD scholar from the Department of Computer Science and Engineering at National Institute of Technology, Arunachal, Pradesh. I, on behalf of Dr. Shwanendu Kumar Chakravarti sir, will be delivering the lecture on the topic Recent Trends in Cybersecurity. Related to the contents that we are going to cover here, first of all, I'll be covering the introduction part of this recent trends. Then we will move on to the emerging trends in cybersecurity. Then we will see what is the need of encryption in cloud and IoT security. Then we will move on to the various encryption techniques that are basically used in the modern days, like identity-based encryption, proxy encryption, searchable encryption, attribute-based encryption, and the most important encryption technique, which is going to be the future trend of the encryption world, which will be basically used in cloud and IoT, even in fog computing and edge computing. That is the homomorphic encryption. So basically, we will be going deep into the topic of this homomorphic encryption in the subsequent lecture. Now, moving on to the introduction part, as we know that with the age of digital revolution in all businesses, small or large organizations worldwide now depend on high-tech systems to track their day-to-day activities. This makes cybersecurity a primary goal for everyone to protect their sensitive data from various online phishing attacks or unauthorized accesses to it. Unrestricted accesses to sensitive data weakens the confidence in users. Cybercrime is a serious issue gradually affecting the businesses, security as well as stability as a whole. Between all the cyber attacks, credit card frauds, and a surge in new app releases with little or no security measures in place has made cybersecurity more critical than ever. These trends in the digital industry are bound to shape the cybersecurity trends of 2022 and further. In fact, that the technology is constantly changing is not a new phenomenon, but it is certainly been taken to new heights in the last year. The word disruption adequately describes the experiences of countless organizations amid COVID-19. No one could have predicted this impact on businesses, technology, and cybersecurity. Here, we will analyze the emerging trends that has come as a result and what cybersecurity trends pose the most risk in 2021 and beyond. In addition to new technology, organizations also face new cybersecurity challenges in the face of this COVID-19 pandemic. According to Cisco's Future of Secure Remote Work report, 61% of survey respondents reported that their organizations experienced an increase in cyber threats of more than 25% since the beginning of the pandemic in March 2020. To prepare for new cybersecurity threats and stay on one step ahead, below are some of the emerging trends in the cybersecurity field to be aware of. So let us understand these topics one by one. First of all, we will be saying how the impact of remote work with the new trends and solutions. It is no surprise that COVID-19 and the resulting shifts to remote work has major implications for the world of cybersecurity. For many, it involved unplanned cloud migration and swift procurement of IT products and services to accommodate a newly remote landscape. In the effort to keep businesses' operations running, many companies rushed typical security measures or even sidestepped them entirely, creating new levels of vulnerability and risk across all industries. Not only that, but the world of remote work isn't going anywhere post-pandemic. Organizations will need to access their current security infrastructure for areas of weaknesses that were left unattended during this sudden shift to remote, and start thinking about a long-term remote security strategy going forward. If your organization experienced a sudden shift to a remote workforce, then we must identify areas of weakness that left our company vulnerable to threats. Coming to the second part, that is the new challenges from ransomware. It is one of the most common threats to any organization's data security, and this threat will continue to increase and evolve as a topic cyber security trend in 2022. Ransomware attacks plague organizations with data theft and economic blows due to the cost of recovering from these attacks. In 2020, ransomware attacks were more expensive than the average data breach, costing nearly $4.44 million on an average. The sophistication of techniques criminals are using is growing too. There is an increasing emphasis on extortion attacks where criminals steal a company's data and encrypt it so that they cannot be accessed by anybody else. Afterward, criminals will blackmail the company, threatening to release its private data unless a ransom is paid. The burden of this cyber threat is significant given the sensitive data on the line as well as the economic impact on paying the ransom. While many IT departments and companies rely on virtual private networks, that is VPNs, to facilitate access to their corporate network, VPNs are proving inadequate in 2021 and beyond. The most common entry vector for ransomware is phishing, and organizations should realize these attacks are ramping up significantly and act accordingly. Zero trust network access has emerged as a more secure option for controlling remote access to sensitive data and reducing the livelihood of an attack. By 2023, 60% of businesses will phase out of VPNs and transition to this ZTNA, that is the Zero Trust Network Access. Now, increased use of multi-factor authentication. While password remains standard for cybersecurity best practices, more companies will adopt multi-factor authentication, that is what we call as the MFA, as an additional defense against data breaches and malicious attacks in 2021. MFA involves the use of two or more separate factors in authorizing users to access secure data, forcing people to use more than one devices to confirm their identity. An example of this kind of MFA in action is having a one-time passcode sent to two different devices. While the use of MFA is critical to security, Microsoft recently urged users to move away from this phone-based MFA. When the one-time password is sent to your phone via SMS text, due to the weak security among the telephone network today. SMS-based are not encrypted, meaning attackers can gain access to these plain text codes. This means companies should choose more secure MFA methods to implement this, namely applications-based MFA like Google Authenticator or Microsoft Authenticator. So while considering implementation of this MFA in our organization and be wary of the risks associated with the phone-based MFA, that is the multi-factor authentication. Now, continued rise of this AI and the machine learning are growing in sophistication and capability, and companies will continue to hone these technologies in 2021 as part of their security infrastructure. AI is increasingly being used to build automated security systems that replace human intervention, making it possible to analyze massive quantities of risk data at a much faster pace. This is beneficial both for large companies dealing with huge amount of data and small or mid-sized companies whose security teams might be under-resourced. While AI presents a major opportunity for stronger threat detection among businesses, the evolution and increased use of this technology goes both ways. Criminal networks are taking advantage of this AI to automate their attacks, and they are turning to data poisoning and model stealing techniques to do so. So that said, organizations would be remiss to bypass the opportunity AI presents. That is, the organizations who suffered our data breaches but had AI technology fully deployed saved an average of $3.58 millions in 2020 as per the report. So if we have already we have not already implemented this AI powered security systems in our businesses to streamline threat detection efforts and potentially save millions in the event of a data breach, then we should implement this AI powered security in our businesses or our organizations to save billions of amount getting hacked or getting destroyed. Now, increased attacks on the cloud services with the rapid and widespread adoption of remote work following this COVID-19, the necessity for cloud-based services and infrastructure increased drastically. Going into 2022 and beyond, this trend will only continue to grow as more business adopt cloud-hosted processes. While cloud services offer a wealth of benefits such as scalability, efficiency, and lower costs, they are still a prime target for the attackers. Organizations will need to take a stock of the security implications that come with the cloud and determine any vulnerabilities that exist in their current infrastructure. For example, misconfigured cloud settings were a leading cause of data breaches in 2020 and resulted on an average total cost of $4.41 million losses. So before undergoing a workload migration to the cloud, make sure that we are aware of the security measures that we should have in place to avoid a data breach in any of our systems. Now, COVID-19 phishing schemes. With the continued release of the COVID-19 vaccination, people are increasingly searching for vaccination information, such as where it's being provided and who is being approved to get it. Unfortunately, this has brought about a significant level of phishing attacks tied to the COVID-19 vaccine. Attacks against pharmaceutical companies and vaccine distributors, along with email phishing attacks discussed as vaccine appointments emails, are on the uptick. Phishing attacks are even more troubling amid the widespread remote workforce, and attackers hone in on individuals connecting to their employer's network from home because they are the easiest target. To combat this, the organizations should consider their identity management and security strategy and ensure only the right people have the appropriate level of access to the resources they need at the right time. So organizations will need to thoroughly access their current infrastructure to align with their goal, while paying special attention to company-wide implementation. So improve our company's identity management strategy to combat the insecure remote workforce and ensure all departments are aligned with the policies enacted to mitigate the risk. Now, increased need for the cybersecurity professionals. Finding well-trained cybersecurity professionals has historically been a challenge across all industries. but the continued shift to and dependencies on a more distributed workforce is creating a more critical need for them in 2021 and in future. Organizations will need to push to find well-trained professionals and subject matter experts to help increase the security of corporate networks. As companies set out to hire more cybersecurity professionals, they should also focus on educating their employees on how to spot attacks on their own. While it may take some time to adequately staff your organization with the right cybersecurity expert, implementing company-wide training can provide a buffer for attackers in the interim. Training should be continuous and companies should constantly measure its effectiveness. Executives should also be involved for such an initiative to be successful. It must be implemented from the top to down. So what we understand from here is, we should give the prioritize cybersecurity staffing company-wide security training as a top goal for our 2022 and for further years. Now, looking into this insider threats, how these insider threats are rising in the organization. As we continue to navigate our remote workforce, insider threats are becoming a heightened area of the concern. While it is far easier to believe that all cybersecurity threats come from external forces, organizations should not ignore the reality and increasing sophistication of threat actor within their own organization. This is especially true as organizations continue to hire remote only employees who are scattered across the world and who they may have hired only after meeting virtually. In 2021 and further, companies must give more consideration to the possibilities of insider threats and data theft at the hands of their own employees. While this can be difficult to come to terms with, the data doesn't lie, that is 15 to 25% of the security breach incidents are caused by the trusted business partners only. Inside threats must be taken seriously and seen as a real risk by security leaders, and tough questions will need to be asked about whether organizations have the proper tools in place to spot and stop them. So inside the data breaches are on the rise, and companies should have the proper tools and systems in place to detect those threats. Since the Internet of Things are evolving nowadays, so these IoT are also on the threats on the higher level. The expanding Internet of Things, that is the IoT, creates more opportunities for the cybercrime. The Internet of Things basically refer to the physical devices other than the computer, phones, and servers which connect to the internet and shared data. Example of this kind of IoT devices include wearable fitness trackers, smart refrigerators, smart watches, voice assistants like Amazon Echo, Google Home, etc. It is estimated that by 2026, there will be 64 billion IoT devices installed around this world. The trend towards remote working is helping to drive this increase. So many additional devices change the dynamic and size of what is something called the cyber attack surfaces. That is the number of potential entry points for the malicious actors. Compared to laptops and smartphones, most IoT devices have fewer processing and storage capabilities. This can make it harder to employ firewalls, antivirus, and any other security applications to safeguard them. As a result, IoT attacks are among the discussed cyber attack trends. So, what is the need of this encryption in cloud and IoT security? See, when the data is uploaded to the cloud, the user loses control over the data, and it is now the responsibility of the cloud service provider to ensure the security of the data. Encryption of the data has become a major part of achieving data confidentiality. Cloud data encryption can be processed by various techniques based on the cloud service model. Users should ensure security of the data before sending it to the cloud or to the IoT devices. Firstly, the user should be responsible for protecting his data. He should encrypt it before submitting it to the cloud using his own technique rather than the technique the cloud provider is using. The cloud provider will have no access to the data without knowing the key. As and when required, the customer can decrypt the data, that is, the user can decrypt the data and have the access. Second option can be that the cloud provider should encrypt the data once he receives it from the customer for securing the data of the customer. Cloud provider should use a technique to encrypt the data of the customer to protect it from any kind of threats. When the customer requires his data, the cloud provider can decrypt and send the unaffected data to the user. Encryption can be done at the network level. An auto encryption system can be implemented on the network channel between the customer and the cloud provider. A decryption system can decrypt the data and supply it to the user as and when required. So we have now we will see some of the most important encryption techniques, that is the encryption techniques like identity-based encryption, proxy encryption, searchable encryption, which is further classified into symmetric and asymmetric searchable encryption, attribute-based encryption, homomorphic encryption, which is one of the most trending technique, which is going to be the future encryption technique. So we will see these topics in details. Now, moving on to this identity-based encryption, see this identity, the name itself signifies that it is related to the identity of any individual user. So identity-based encryption is an important primitive of identity-based cryptography. As such, it is a type of public key encryption in which the public key of a user is some unique information about the identity of the users. Let's say, for example, a user's email address. This means that a sender who has access to the public parameter of the system can encrypt a message using the text value of the receiver's name or email address as a key. The receiver obtains its decryption key from a central authority which needs to be trusted, as it generates secret key for every use. Identity-based encryption was firstly proposed by Adi Shamir in the year 1984. He was, however, only able to give an instantiation of identity-based signature, and identity-based encryption remained an open problem for several years. The peering-based Bonnet-Franklin scheme and Cox encryption scheme based on quadratic residues both solved this identity-based problems in 2021, and since then we have been using this identity-based system that allows any party to generate a public key from a known identity value such as an ASCII string. So a trusted third party called the private key generator generates the corresponding private keys. To operate the private key generator, first publishes a master public key and retains the corresponding master key, referred to as the private master key. So given the master public key, and any party can compute a public key corresponding to the identity by combining the master public key with the identity value. To obtain a corresponding private key, the party authorized to use the identity contacts the PKG, that is the private key generator, which uses the master private key to generate the private key for identity. As a result, the parties may encrypt the messages or verify the signatures with no prior distribution of the keys between the individual participants. This is extremely useful in cases where pre-distribution of authenticated keys is inconvenient or infeasible due to technical restraints. However, to decrypt or sign the messages, the authorized user must obtain the appropriate private key from the private key generator, that is the PKG. So a limitation of this approach is that PKG must be highly trusted, as it is capable of generating any user's private key and may therefore decrypt or sign the messages without authorization, because any user's private key can be generated through the use of the third party's secret key. Moving on to the next encryption technique, that is the proxy re-encryption. So proxy re-encryption scheme are the crypto systems which allows third parties, that is the third party means we are taking it as the proxies, to alter a ciphertext which has been encrypted for one party, so that it may be decrypted by the another. So a proxy re-encryption is generally used when one party, say for example Bob, wants to reveal the contents of the message sent to him and encrypted with his public key to a third party. So we can take that third party as the Charlie. So this Charlie, without revealing his private key, can decrypt it. So Bob does not want the proxy to be able to read the contents of his message. Bob could designate a proxy to re-encrypt of his message that is to be sent to Charlie. So this generates a new key that Charlie can use to decrypt the message. Now, if Bob sends Charlie a message that was encrypted under Bob's key, the proxy will alter the message, allowing Charlie to decrypt it. Okay. So this method allows for a number of applications such as email forwarding, law enforcement monitoring, and content distribution, and so on. A weaker re-encryption scheme is one in which proxy possesses both parties' keys simultaneously. One key decrypts a plaintext while the other encrypts it. Since the goal of many proxy re-encryption scheme is to avoid revealing either of the keys or the underlying plain text to the proxy, so this method is not ideal basically. So proxy re-encryption has potential applications for secure sharing in cloud computing environment. In the cloud scenario, the re-encryption key is provided to the cloud operator or to the admin for better security purpose. Now, let us move on to this searchable encryption. Searchable encryption is basically defined as the searching for an encryption, an encrypted data located on untrusted server or cloud without the server learns anything from the data. So in the year 2000, a scientist with the namely Song et al. Proposed the idea of this searchable encryption scheme, which solves the issue on searching encrypted data on the cloud. It is comfortable to keep data on mail servers and file servers or other data storage servers in encrypted form to minimize the risk of privacy and security. However, in the name of security, this frequently entails sacrificing functionality. For example, if a client wants to get just a document that includes a specific term, it isn't clear how to let the data storage server execute the search and respond to the query without compromising the data confidentiality. The most straightforward options can be like one technique is to download all the encrypted messages, all the encrypted messages data to the general and do the decryption. Then find the original data with the keywords, whereas the operation will additionally download needless documents which do not contain any specific keywords, which was the network and the storage also. Furthermore, because the decryption and searching of these needless documents incurs a significant computational overhead, this technique is unsuitable for low bandwidth network environment. Another extreme method is to send the private key and keywords to the storage server, then decrypt and locate the encrypted documents on the server. One clear disadvantage of this strategy is that the user's personal information is re-exposed to the server, posing severe threats to data security and the privacy. To address these issues, the searchable encryption techniques involves as time demands, capable of ensuring data privacy and availability while simultaneously supporting encrypted message data query and retrieval operations. In a single user data sharing scenario, searchable encryption technique consists of the different phases. So in a single user sharing scenario, we can see these four primary phases. That is the encryption, trapdoor, then the search, then the decryption. So this encryption, that is the user encrypts the original data information with the secret key and creates the index structure, after which the encrypted message can index or uploaded to the server. Now this trapdoor, it is a user with keyword retrieval ability creates a trapdoor to not reveal any keyword information. Coming to the search, using the keyword trapdoor as the input, the server executes a searching algorithm and returns all encrypted data files that contain the keyword related to the trapdoor that requires the server to obtain additional information besides that keyword information in the encrypted data. Decryption, it is the encrypted document returned to the server with a secret key are decrypted by the user and get the search results. Now moving on to the attribute based encryption. Attribute based encryption is a type of public key encryption in which the secret key of a user and the ciphertexts are dependent upon attributes. Example, the country in which we live or the kind of subscriptions we use. So these are the attributes basically. In such a system, the decryption of a ciphertext is possible only if the set of attributes of the user key matches the attributes of the ciphertext. A crucial security aspect of attribute-based encryption is collision resistance. An adversary that holds multiple keys should only be able to access data if at least one individual key grants the access. Now, this attribute-based encryption can be used for log encryption basically. Instead of encrypting each part of a log with the keys of all recipients, it is possible to encrypt the log only with the attributes which matches with the recipient's attributes. So this primitive can also be used for broadcast encryption in order to decrease the number of keys used. Attribute-based encryption methods are also widely employed in vector-driven search engine interfaces and many other places. So these encryption techniques, what we have seen or what we have gone through till now, that is attribute-based encryption, searchable encryption, proxy re-encryption, and identity-based encryption. These are the light-weighted encryption techniques that can be employed to the IoT devices for securing the data. Now, one more most important encryption technique that we are going to see, that is the homomorphic encryption. So we will come to this topic. So before that, let us understand why this homomorphic encryption comes into act. Okay. Through this slide, I am trying to explain by the use of a simple example. Let's take an example. Say, for example, Alice runs an accounting firm. Alice, okay, any user who is running an accounting firm which stores all of his customers' balances on the cloud. Okay, so he is holding a cloud server where everything is stored. So by utilizing the cloud, it means that he does not have to manage the underlying infrastructure of the cloud. Instead, it is managed by the third-party cloud service provider. The problem Alice faces is that in order to keep his customers' accounts secure, he encrypts them when they are in the database or in the storage. This prevents a malicious outsider gaining direct access to the information, while also stopping the cloud service employees from being able to see the data because it is already encrypted. But when he needs to make a change to an account balance, then he has to either transfer the encrypted account back to his trusted environment or decrypt the account data in the cloud. Or if he wants to update the account, then encrypt it again before this storage. So this becomes a hectic task. So this creates a risk also, where the data has to be decrypted at the point where it can be used. Sorry. Because homomorphic encryption can process data while it is in the encrypted state. Alice can simply apply changes to the encrypted account balance by sending encrypted data to the cloud and have the account updated without it ever being in the decrypted form, or we can say without converting it into the plain text. So this allows Alice cloud computing firm to keep its customers secure while having the added benefit of using the cloud. So in short, what we can say that whenever we are going to send the data to the cloud, we should encrypt it and send it to the cloud. Now, this becomes a hectic task if we want to do some manipulation, some modification in the uploaded data. So during that time, again, we will have to either fetch that encrypted data which is already hosted in the cloud, that has to be taken back to our trusted environment. Then again, we have to manipulate or do the updation. Then again, we have to encrypt it and send. So this becomes a complex task. So in order to do the computations while the data is in the encrypted state, this homomorphic encryption proves to be one of the best options. So what is the solution? Let us see the solution. Before going into the solution, let me describe about this. What is the difference between this homomorphic encryption and this simple encryption? So as we know that encryption means it is a process of encoding a message or any information in such a way that only the authorized parties can access it or read it. Whereas the homomorphic encryption is a kind of encryption which allows the untrusted third party like the cloud or the service provider to perform certain computation, not all, certain computation functions on the encrypted data while preserving the features of the function and format of the encrypted data without disturbing the original format of the data. That means the originality remains as it is since it is already in the encrypted form, isn't it? So what is the solution? So how do we make anything, any technique or any encryption scheme to this format, means to this homomorphic encryption format, so that the encryption or any computation can be done or can be performed in the encrypted state? So again, let me just take an example, a small example. Say Alice, there is a user. Okay, so Alice wants to get the pearls assembled into a necklace, but she is worried about the theft because she is not going to monitor the workman throughout. So Alice workers need to assemble pearls into the necklace. This is the assigned task to the worker. But how can the workers process the pearls without having access to them? So they need the access. So when Alice is giving the access to the worker, she is again worried about the theft. So there is a solution. Alice puts the materially locked glass glove box for which only she has the key. And the worker assemble the pearls and finally make a necklace in the glove box. Alice then unlocks the box and get the assembled necklace. So this is how she is able to get the necklace with the number of pearls she had given to the worker. So she has not lost her security, and she has also got the work done. So we need a security system in our daily life, like in cloud, in IoT, or in fog computing, or edge computing. Okay, so we need a security system where one can perform operations over the ciphertext while decrypting it, without decrypting it. That means we are not converting the encrypted message, which is the ciphertext, into the plain text for doing any performance or any operation. So homomorphic encryption is one of the right solution for this one. Now let us see what is how we can define this homomorphic encryption in technical words. So basically what we have seen that any encryption or any cryptographic technique is having basically 4 steps. That is a key generation, where we are going to generate the public key or the private key. Then we have the encryption part, then there is a decryption part. But here in this homomorphic encryption, we have 4 steps. That is a key generation. Then by using that key, we can encrypt the plain text and can convert that plain text into the ciphertext. Now, upon that ciphertext, the computation can be done. This is what I have tried to show in the step 3 of the 4 steps in homomorphic encryption. So this computation is the additional advantage of this homomorphic encryption. Now, how to define this one? Homomorphic encryption is a form of encryption which allowing one to perform calculations on the encrypted data without decrypting it first. The result of the computation is in an encrypted form. When decrypted, the output is the same if the operation had been performed on the unencrypted data. Okay, so homomorphic encryption is a form of encryption with an additional evaluation capability for computing over the encrypted data without access to the secret key. The result of such a computation remains encrypted. That means the output that we are going to get will also remain in the encrypted format only. Homomorphic encryption can be viewed as an extension of either symmetric key or public key cryptography. As we know that homomorphic refers to homomorphism in algebra. So the encryption and decryption functions can be thought of as homomorphism between plain text and the ciphertext spaces. So finally, homomorphic encryption is having 4 different steps. That is the key generation, encryption, evaluation, and decryption. So nowadays, every encryption techniques are getting converted or getting modified into the homomorphic encryption for doing the computations on the encrypted data. So this is quite feasible in cloud computing, in IoT, fog, and many more services. Now let us see the mathematical definition of this homomorphic encryption. Why I'm going deeper into this homomorphic encryption is because this is going to be one of the future techniques for encryption, and this will be proved as one of the best technique for securing our data while keeping it in the cloud and enjoying all the facilities like computations, doing manipulation, doing anything, whatever we want, right? So technically, let us understand here. A homomorphic public key encryption scheme has the 4 algorithms. That is what we know. So that is a key generation, key gen epsilon. That is what I have denoted. Then encrypt epsilon is there for the encryption module. Then decrypt epsilon is there for the decryption, and an additional algorithm, that is the evaluate epsilon. Okay, that takes an input, the public key PK, a circuit C for a permitted set of C epsilon of the circuit, and a tuple of ciphertext, that is a psi equals to psi1 to t number of psi. Okay, so it outputs a ciphertext psi after the computation. The computational complexity of all these algorithms must be polynomial in security parameter, which is denoted with this, which can be denoted with any like lambda or anything, and the size of the ciphertext, which is denoted here with the C. Epsilon is correct for any circuit, that is a C epsilon. If for any key pair like public key or the private key, that output by key generation epsilon, which is given by this lambda, and any circuit C that belongs to the circuit environment of this C epsilon, and where we are using the plain text, that is the pi 1 to any number of pi 1, pi 2, pi t, isn't it? Now this psi I will be generated after the encryption performed on this pi I. Pi I is the plain text which is encrypted with this public key, that is a PK. So it is the case that psi is generated after evaluating the ciphertext. So after the computation of this ciphertext, this psi is generated. So this the ciphertext can be decrypted using the private key, that is the SK, which is being held by the right user. Okay. Now moving on to in a deeper part of this homomorphic encryption, it has been further classified into different parts like partially homomorphic, partially, then somewhat, and fully homomorphic encryption. Okay, so how they are classified? Now further we can see that this fully homomorphic encryption, which is nowadays in trend for doing the encryption, decryption. So it has been further categorized into learning with errors, integer-based homomorphic encryption, lattice-based homomorphic encryption, and verifiable homomorphic encryption. So let us understand this one in a deeper way, in a better way. Partially, somewhat, and fully homomorphic encryption. See, a circuit. Actually, I have just taken an example of this circuit. So a circuit is a directed acyclic graph, we know that, which has a set of inputs, that is the gates. Example, we can take additional or the multiplication gate. Edges that connect inputs and the edges together, and a final output. So circuits have two properties of interest, that is namely size and the depth. So what is the size and the depth? See, the size is the number of gates a circuit has. Okay, the depth is the biggest distance between every possible input and the output. So through this example, or through this figure, the circuit has a size of 2 as it has 2 gates, and a depth of 2 as the longest path is between Y and the final output, and it has 2 gates along the way. Okay, that is a multiple gate and this addition gate. Okay, now based on these parameters, we are going to distinguish this partially, somewhat, and fully homomorphic encryption. This homomorphic encryption is a lightweighted encryption technique, and that can be implemented into the IoT, because in IoT we basically need lots of computations to be performed, isn't it? So while performing computations on the encrypted data, this can give a double fold protection. Like, we are able to save our data, means we are able to protect our data from any kind of threats, attacks, or anything, and parallelly we are able to do the computations on that one also. So this is the advantage of using this homomorphic encryption. Now let me categorize this one first of all. Now, partially homomorphic encryption, as we can see here through this table, this type of a scheme can evaluate any circuit composed of a single type of gate, that is either addition or multiplication, but never both. So it doesn't restrict neither the size nor the depth of the circuit. So it does not restrict any size, neither the depth nor the circuit. This type is well suited for the applications that only need to perform either addition or multiplication on the encrypted data. So best suited for only a single type of computations. Now, somewhat homomorphic encryption, this type of a scheme can evaluate circuit composed of both addition and multiplication gates, but with a restriction on the depth. So somewhat homomorphic encryption is useful for evaluating low degree polynomials up to the certain level, not to the entire level. So there is a limited, there is a limitation, okay, in the depth. However, sometimes we need to evaluate circuits of arbitrary depth, where unlimited depth can be evaluated. So this fully homomorphic encryption can evaluate circuit composed of both addition and multiplication gates. But in contrast to somewhat homomorphic encryption, this fully homomorphic encryption has an unlimited circuit depth, which makes it suitable for deep learning applications. Although many fully homomorphic encryption schemes have been proposed during the last decade, in which Chris Gentry in the year I think in the year 2009 he has given one of the novel techniques based on this fully homomorphic encryption for the cloud security. Okay, so although many fully homomorphic encryption have been proposed during the last 10 to 15 years, it has been difficult to use them in practice. I'll explain why. Actually, fully homomorphic encryption are now built on the basis of this somewhat homomorphic encryption. And as I said, that Chris Gentry, who showed in his paper that how to build fully homomorphic encryption by the use of this somewhat homomorphic encryption, and by the use of the term known as the bootstrapping. Okay, so I'll explain that one also. See, bootstrapping. Firstly, we construct. So yes.
In the previous slide,
So
could you please go to the previous slide? Yes.
yes.
So here in the diagram you have used gates that are multiplication and addition.
Correct.
And in the table you have used OR and AND. But to implement multiplication or even addition, we need multiple OR and AND gates. So what will be the size? The number of multiplication and addition, or the number of OR and AND gates?
It will be basically a number of OR and AND. So that will be the gate. So just for explaining purpose, I have just used a simple diagram. That is the matter.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yes. Okay. Now, moving on to this bootstrapping. Firstly, since fully homomorphic encryption is built on the basis of this somewhat homomorphic encryption. Okay, so which supports homomorphic computations on some bounded depth. So somewhat homomorphic encryption supports homomorphic computations to some certain depth. Then we convert this somewhat homomorphic encryption into a fully homomorphic encryption using a refreshing procedure that reduces the noise in a given ciphertext. Okay, so noise means what? Means it is suppose there are 100 data that need to be computed. So out of which only first 10 are getting the computations and the remaining 90 are not able to do the computation. So in the first phase, only 10 are able to go under the operation. Now the remaining are still waiting. So in that case, what will happen? This bootstrapping or this refreshing technique will take 10 data at a time. Again, once the computation of this 10 data is completed, it will take another 10 data. So the process will keep on going. So this will this is how the computation can be performed in a better way. However, the technique is slow. So this is what in nowadays the research is going on in order to increase the efficiency and decrease the timing consumption and all. So once this technique comes into the existence or comes into the real use, whatever the encryption techniques are existing nowadays, this homomorphic encryption can do the entire computations while securing the data and giving the security as well. So technically, the bootstrapping method can be understood as a homomorphic evaluation of the decryption circuit to refresh. So that is a refreshing technique. A ciphertext for more computations, isn't it? So this is for refreshing a ciphertext for more and more computations. Now, through this equation 6 shows that bootstrapping procedure aims to evaluate the decryption formula approximately and obtain an encryption of the original message in a large ciphertext modulus. One more technique of this homomorphic encryption is there. That is the verifiable fully homomorphic encryption, and this is also one of the best technique for doing computations on the data while uploading it into IoT or fog or cloud or anywhere. So let us understand this diagram or this model also. See, a verifiable encryption scheme is a crypto system that allows us to prove some properties about an encrypted value without disclosing it. If the verification option is combined with the homomorphic capabilities in the same encryption scheme, it becomes a verifiable, fully homomorphic encryption. So we assume, let us assume a cloud computing system that comprises data provider. So I have denoted with this DP, data provider, a cloud service provider, requesting party, a trust authenticator, and a public auditor proxy. So these are the different entities that are involved in the verifiable fully homomorphic encryption. Now let me explain this one. In this system, the data provider is a party who intends to outsource its data computation to the cloud, that is verifiable outsourced computation over the encrypted data. Since its data may be highly sensitive, the data provider wants to keep them from being exposed to the other parties. The cloud service provider provides storage and computation services to the data provider. It is responsible for carrying out computations according to the data provider's demand. Since cloud service provider could be on getting to know the data of the data provider and cannot be fully trusted, the data provider prefer uploading encrypted data to the cloud. Data provider means the service user, you can say. The trusted authenticator is introduced as a semi-trusted party, which acts like an authentication center for generating system security keys for computation and checking the eligibility of the requesting party. The requesting party is basically a party that requests for the final computation result processed by the cloud service provider. Okay. Cloud may possibly forge or provide wrong computation results to the requesting party. So in that way, we introduce the public auditor proxy, that is a PAP, as a party who helps the requesting party to verify the correctness of the computation result written by the cloud service provider after doing the computation. Proxy audit, public auditor proxy is only trusted for verification, which means that no private information, that is like plain text input and plain text output, should be exposed to the public auditor proxy. We assume that trusted authenticator and the cloud service provider do not collude with each other. That means they do not talk to each other. So in particular, the cloud service provider cannot achieve the data encryption secret keys of the data provider provided by the trusted authenticator. It is thus impossible for the cloud service provider to obtain any information of the data provider's original data, except executing computations on the ciphertext. That means the cloud service provider is not able to even get the access. It is not able to touch the data which is hosted by the user. The requesting party can only get access to the computation result provided by the cloud service provider. Even if it gets the chance to know the data input from the data provider, it cannot decrypt this data to get the initial information of the computation. Trusted authenticator may act as a middle party between cloud service provider and requesting party in re-encrypting the computation result. Since this trusted authenticator is semi-trusted, in this procedure, it is required that trusted authenticator cannot get the plain text computation result. Moreover, trusted authenticator and public auditor proxy do not collude or they do not mix with each other. As the public auditor proxy cannot gain the data encrypted secret keys, otherwise it will be aware of all the plain text input and the output. Now, moving on to the research scope. So there are there is a huge scope in this homomorphic encryption. As we can see here, recently this homomorphic encryption can be used here in e-voting, biometric verification, protection of the mobile, lottery protocol agents, and medical reports, as we can see here in COVID pandemic. So there are lots of reports which are generated and which is getting exposed to the various organizations or to the various entities. So in that way, we can encrypt these medical reports and we can upload in the cloud. Now, once anyone want to do any modification or do any updation, so this homomorphic encryption can be proved to be the best option. Secondly, this several works has already been done on this homomorphic encryption, such as integer-based, learning with errors, and many more other schemes are also there. Okay, so even though nowadays, due to the shifting of various technologies into the cloud, threats are rising parallelly. So since the threats are rising, we need to think over our data, our sensitive data, which we are uploading in the cloud, in the fog, or in IoT. So IoT, edge, fog, and cloud computing are known for its fast processing, isn't it? So hence the security should be done in no time, or the encryption should be done in no time. Also, the operation on the encrypted data should be done within fraction of second. Since we are not downloading our plain text, which is already uploaded in the cloud, which is in the ciphertext format. So in that case, we are not downloading it to the secured environment. We are doing the computation in the cloud itself, isn't it? So this is quite possible through the homomorphic encryption. Moving on to the next one, that is the existing schemes lags behind due to its worse efficiency. However, this homomorphic encryption is still in the developing stage. So hopefully in the coming years, this will evolve as one of the best encryption technique. However, homomorphic encryption is the best option for performing secret operations on the encrypted data. This could be fruitful if the encryption, decryption, and the operation time is minimized or it is improved. So many researchers and the scholars, they are focusing on this topic to decrease the time consumption, and they are also doing that, but it is not coming into the real-time users. So this part is basically for that focus on the research scopes and all. Okay, so that's all for this session, and thank you all for keeping patience while listening this lecture. So thank you, everyone.
So thank you, Mr. Mahato, for presenting such a nice talks. So any query from the participants? If you have any doubts, you may unmute yourself and directly ask to the speaker.
Sure.
Sir, I have a question.
Sir, please.
When we are trying to reduce the computation workload on, let's say, cloud service provider, we know that most of the mathematical, arithmetic computations, they are not very the most time consuming part of is the search operations.
Correct.
So, right. So even if the computation is offloaded, but the search will still have to be done. So how this homomorphic encryption exactly boosts multiple, like so much the workload, like it reduces the workload so much, because anyhow the search operations has to be done, right?
See, this homomorphic encryption is not limited only to the computation only, but it handles the searching part also, verification part also. So that is what this homomorphic encryption, that is why I have tried to show this verifiable homomorphic encryption also. So this homomorphic encryption handles almost most of the security techniques like verification, searching, isn't it? But nowadays, only one of the companies, that is IBM, who is using this homomorphic encryption in the testing phase, and hopefully we will come up with new techniques of bootstrapping, which is going to enhance the encryption, decryption, and the evaluation searching time. Okay, so this bootstrapping can increase the performance or minimize the time consumption.
Okay, sir. Yes. Thank you.
Okay.
Any more questions from participants? Okay, so thank you, Mr. Mahato, for spending your time here and delivering a nice talk. I hope that the topics is really help the participants to take it further and in their academic and research careers. Thank you very much.
Yes. Thank you, sir. Thank you for giving me an opportunity for this talk, sir.
Okay.
Thanks.
So participants, the next session will be delivered by eminent academician Professor Sukumar Nandi sir from IIT Guwahati. So in between you may do your work, not an issue, and you please rejoin within 3:55 p.m. I expect huge participations for that session, and I hope that you people will be really benefited for that nice talks will be delivered by him. So till then, bye bye.